So we start the class for today. We've done the chanting, and so we start with the 30th sutra today. We had finished the 29th, that was Na Art Vishesh Prabalya, if I'm not wrong, because there we were examining basically about uh, Pratyaksha Praman, whether it is a valid Praman, whether it is an independent Praman, what is its relationships to other Praman. Yes, so next part of the examination of this very same Pratyaksha Praman, it involves the examination of its relationship with Anuman Praman also, or in a way it is questioning that whether Anuman Praman can also merge Pratyaksha Praman into it, right? So if you look at it that way, we will have to understand the interrelationship and how this objection is first raised. So 30th is what we call the Purva Paksha. The objection is raised, as I've explained earlier also, and you must know, Purva Paksha is a technique used by the Indian masters where they put up any kind of argument or put up any kind of a theorem, something that is to be proved, and then they put on the opposing views also, all kinds of oppositions that can come towards the acceptance of that. They are examined and then they are discarded or disproved one by one using proper logic. Right. So a system of logic, it involves definitions, some of which I've given you earlier. So all of these involve basically definitions given in the earlier Nyaya Sutras. So if we just take up this sutra for now, I'll share it on the screen. So this one is the 30th sutra. So when we go into the 30th, what does it say? प्रत्यक्ष अनुमानम एक देश ग्रहणात उपलब्ध है. So is what is the validity of what we are observing? That is being questioned here. So what is pratyaksham? It is direct perception. Anumanam is inference. So here is saying pratyaksham is anumanam itself in a different face, in a different version. It is a hidden version of uh, anuman only. Why? Ek desha grahanat upalabdhe. Because through perception, what do we infer or observe about an object? We observe only the ek desha, only one part, ek desha, not all the parts. All the parts are never available to her, to us. So, like in this also, the example is given: we perceive a tree, while we really perceive only a part of it. So this knowledge of the tree as a whole is derived from the knowledge of a part of it. So according to the objectors, it is a case of inference. You are only inferring what the rest of the tree is like because you don't see it. So you know that a tree is brown and round and seeing the front part of. So I will take a different example that will be more valid and easier for you to comprehend the later sutras. Just take a human being or an animal or whatever. So we are taking a human being. So in the case of a human being, when we observe a human being, we can see that that person is observed by us, and we observe only the portion that is visible to us, and sometimes it might be just the back, right? And yet, even by observing that back, even if I'm not able to tell you that this is such and such person, I might not recognize, but as a jati, as a general category, I can easily cognize that this is a human being. Sometimes by the length of the hair and by other features, you might even mistake a man for a woman or a woman for a man. Yes, so these days a lot of this kind of people dress like that. It's difficult to tell. Earlier women were supposed to have long hair, so the one with the short hair was instantly called boyish, or what is the term for it, a tomboy. Right? So in this way a lot of uh, errors of perception may be there. That is due to a certain what we call genus, a subdivision of the uh, object we are observing. So that is the crux of the argument the Sutrakara, the Nyaya Sutra writer Gautam Muni, he is going to give us. So what he basically, what we, if we understand the objection once again, what is the objection? Pratyaksha anumanam ek desha grahanat uplabdhe. He is saying that the objector is saying that if we observe any object, then this perception is only partial. The perception is only partial. The rest of it is just an inference. We only infer that the rest of the tree is like that. So now, what is the way to address this problem? Yes. So I'm moving on to the next sutra. So he's saying na pratyakshena yavat tavat upalambhat. Okay, I've split the words na pratyakshena yavat, then you split it, then tavat. Tavat will have a ta, but because of sandhi, it becomes the, and then upalambhat. So what he's saying basically here is this is not so. Na. In Shankaracharya's objections, he uses a very common word nanu, no, which is a very accurate signal that this is a refutation of the Purva Paksha. This will be the Uttar Paksha. So here, of course, the ancient Sanskrit or even modern Sanskrit uses na, a simple Hindi word also na, no. So it says no, what you are saying is not proper. Uh, why? Because I've caught you. How have I caught you? You are saying, he is saying pratyakshena yavat tavat uplambat. So he's saying that the portion that you are accepting for illumination, that portion that the person is actually observed, that much you accept it is pratyaksham. The rest of your objection I will decimate later on, slowly, right? So first of all, you do accept that the portion that the person is observing, that is actually perceived, or as that is direct perception, that is not anumanam. So that in that you accept at least pratyaksham as a pramanam, right? You cannot merge it into uh, anumanam. Of course, you can merge, anuman into pratyaksha. The reverse can be done, because when you are doing an anumanam, every anumanam has a basis of pratyaksham. Yeah. If you have you can inferring the smoke and the fire, then if you are seeing the smoke and you inferring fire, you have done a pratyaksham of the fire, right? But still, you cannot totally negate anuman also. We'll come to that later on. Let's take it slowly. So basically, how he is analyzing is, first let us establish pratyaksham or direct inference as a pramanam, as a source of knowledge, as a means of knowledge, or as an instrument of knowledge. So na pratyakshena yavat tavat. Yavat tavat means as much that is available, that much, as much and that much. So as much that is available for perception, that much you have to agree is perceived directly. That much you cannot negate. So in the case of a human being, if you are seeing that person, then okay, you might say, okay, please turn around. I want to see your face, whether you're a boy or a girl, or I want to see your face and I can recognize you that this is George or this is Manisha. So that way I can recognize you. But even besides that, you recognize that a part is being perceived, and that is sufficient for me to indicate that there is a whole behind it. There is a whole behind it. What is the whole behind it? That is avyavi. That will come in the next verses. But here, basically, if we are saying at least that by your own admission, you are saying that the part that is being observed is pratyaksham. Simple. I'm not repeating it again and again, but just for you, okay. This thing, if I go into details, it has been, analyzed ad nauseum. You can see the how long is the objection for this. So this is basically every objection is analyzed. But if you understand the basis, you will know that all these objections. I can go into these also, but at least for that one sutra, I'll need 3 to 4 hours. So if you want sometimes to have fun, we can do that thing also, right? Because it is good to do this, because you will find a lot of people have done this kind of uh, objection and then objection clarification, especially later acharyas and later darshan shastra, basically to establish the correctness of their position. And sometimes other darshan shastra, other systems, they have established that these are wrong, right? So they raise they raise newer objections. But if you stick to the main text, then you will find within the text itself all your objections are going to be answered. Baki, the nitpicking is never denied. There is always small things that people argue about, but overall the picture is always very clear. So if we uh, so far in the up to the 31st sutra, we have clearly seen that whatever is pratyaksham, at least that part, you have to admit is direct knowledge. It is pratyaksha, whatever you are seeing. So next we go on to the 32nd sutra. So what does this say? Nacha एक देश उपलब्धि ही अव्यव सिद्ध अव्यव sadbhava. So he's saying that moreover, na cha, no, uh, therefore, cha means and also. So ek desh uplabdhi, even if there is perception of one part, there is ek desh uplabdhi, uh, avyavi sadbhava. Behind that, there is an avyavi, which is the whole behind the part. Avyavi sadbhavat means avyavi exists. There is a whole that exists. That is a whole is that is behind the part. So if you see here, what does it say? The perception of a part does not exclude perception of the whole of which it is a part. Huh. So if you touch the hand, leg, or any other limb of a person, you are said to touch the person. Similarly, if you perceive a part of a thing, you are said to perceive the thing. The part implies the whole, and the perception of the part implies the perception of the whole. So basically, how is he is resolving this problem? He is resolving it by saying that if for every part that you see, behind that there is a whole. We can add one more thing, which we have seen in Vedanta also. We've seen multiple places that for every entity to be uh, recognized as a separate entity, there is always a conscious force behind that. There is always a consciousness behind. Behind this person, there is a conscious being who is holding together this thing. The moment this being moves out, this thing will merge back into the elements. So there is always a avyavi. And because of that, that thing gets a name. It might be a tree, it might be a a person, it might be a table, a chair. So what are the two conditions for that uh, conglomeration to exist? It does not apply to collections of objects. First thing you does not apply to collections. Why? If you are saying there is a huge heap of sand, so for that, you can obviously separate the parts. You can easily separate the parts. They are consisting of small parts. But if it is a wood, it is a chair, it is a table, it is a person, it is a living being. So for a living being, always there is a consciousness behind that living being, which is holding together, and thus object is created for which the parts are, even though the parts are there, those parts always belong to the whole. The whole always holds together. There is a holder. That holder we call devta. So for that holder to function, it will have to include all the components. Otherwise, you will have a different name for that object or the holder. So small part might be missing, like so some one person not have a leg, but still you will be able to recognize that person as a leg, as a whole. So if you are assuming that parts exist apart from the whole, parts have there is a if you remember, we said the definition of mithya. What is the definition of mithya? Mitha siddha, something that is composed of parts, right? So that composition of parts is there obviously, but there will always be a holder of that composition, which gives a separate new name to that. So one will be, as I said, I'm separating there the jada elements, which you have something like a collection, right? But if there is something chetan, then first of all it will have to be composed of many parts behind which there is a holder. Second, as in the example of a table, chair, or whatever, or even sometimes, no, you heard about beavers making a dam, right? There is a dam, so it is something that is a separate entity, even though it is made of parts. So there, and in the case of all things made by human, there is a conscious force outside of that which has made that object, which has brought together, and thus it has given a name to that object. It might be your whole house itself, or any of the objects in your house that are made by that. So all of these have an avyavi. Avya, avyavi. Avya is part. Avyavi is the whole, the holder of the part. So in this way, whenever you are doing any perception, then in that perception there will always be a whole of which you have a name. So even if you are doing a perception of that front portion, you can tell that this is such and such person. You might need to further classify your perception to give a name to the person, and so you will have to observe from maybe another angle. But that does not mean that whole is in any way or it is just a composition of parts. Because if it were a composition of parts, then the next part of the agreement argument goes in this way, that for any other composition of parts, then like army is a collection of men, then the forest is a collection of trees. But there, in the case of individual components of that composition, each of them are individual objects. Individual objects, you can cognize them. You can recognize them when you from a distance. The forest will appear like you can't see the tree separately, right? Similarly, from a distance, the army will you can not see each of the individuals separately. But when you come closer, you can cognize. But for the components of composition, or components of any composition like a human being or any other composition, where we say the holder is there, the avyavi is there, the parts of the composition, actually if you go down to the smallest parts, uh, the atoms, or what we say, the in our system, the paramanus. So those paramanus are actually, they don't have any size or shape or weight, so you cannot perceive, they are beyond perception. So those can never be perceived, the actual parts of a living or a what we call an avyavi. The avyavi, all parts you cannot see, but for the tree and all, you can actually see those for a forest or for an army. So these are the examples given from the text itself. So if in this case we are saying that basically what we are proving is, first we proved, what did we prove? We proved that we are definitely having pratyaksh jnanam of a part. And second, what we are doing is, there is no part as separate from the whole. The whole includes the parts. You cannot name them all as separate. You cannot say that these parts are different and the whole does not exist. The whole does not exist argument is being discarded here, right? So in this way, we try to understand that this whole has to be understood as something that cannot be denied existence. We can cognize maybe other parts of the whole. Some of them we might not cognize, but still we will always know that this is a human, right? So in this way, the whole is understood. This is further established in the next sutra. What does it say? Sadhyatvat avyavini sandeha. So there might be, he says, some doubt, because the whole is yet to be established. So how we go about that? So sadhyatvat. Sadhya is something that we have to strive for to achieve, or something we are trying to perceive. So he says that because we are trying to perceive uh, an avyavi, a whole, and yet we are not able to glean or understand or get the full information about that avyavi. So he's saying that there is some doubt. So this is another doubt. Oh, someone is, okay, maybe probably because the screen went blank. Manisha, can you check if it's working on Clubhouse? Is the sound is coming okay?
Yeah, it is.
It's okay, na? So maybe for some time, maybe it was cracking, or sometimes some other person's
Papa,
connection. Yes.
I'm terribly sorry, but can we stop here for today? मुझे उससे उल्टी लग रहा है. I don't feel good.
Okay, okay. You go ahead and you do it. I'll continue the class because it's recording also, and
Okay.
George is with me, right? So we continue here. Sadhyatvad avyavini sandeha. So what he's saying is, there is some doubt. So please clear that doubt also. So what he's saying is, the parts alone are realities. There is no whole behind them. So a tree, for instance, is yellow in some parts and green in other parts. If the tree was one whole, then the contradictory qualities of yellowness and greenness would not have belonged to it simultaneously. Hence, the parts alone must accordingly be regarded as real. So we are examining here the parts of, like here a tree is given, or if in the case of a human body, then the human body has different parts. So we can say that they all have their own separate existence, right? And so the parts alone are real, and the holder of the parts is not considered real. So for that, what does he say? He replies here that how do we say that the whole, or the holder of the parts, or the whole human being has is actually the real thing being observed, and the parts are merely appendages, or they are merely observations of ours that create a better picture of the whole. So he says in the 34th sutra, 2:134, what does it say? Sarva grahanam avyavi siddhe. So he's saying that sarva grahanam, if sarva agrahanam, so sarva agrahanam. So if he's saying that if there is no perception at all, uh, uh, so avyav asiddhe. So basically, if there is no avyavi, uh, if there is no avyavi, then there will be total non-perception. If there is no whole, then there will be no total non-perception. Because what does Sarvaha say? What does all say? That all the things that are part of that whole, substance, quality, action, generality. So Dravya, Guna, Karma, Kriya, all these are understood as components of a whole. Every whole has some kind of uh, dravyatvam, what we say, something that gives it substance. So well, for a human being, we will say that he has a body which has these parts. These are the sense organs that it must have. He must have a mind and a buddhi and so on. So all these together they define that whole, and because of that, when they come together, they are given a name. So it is a human being, a tree, a dog, a leopard, or whatever. Or as I said, in the case of other jada vastus, other non-living entities, like we see in the case of the table and the chair, and those are also created by conscious entities. So in this case, he says that if you are saying that there is uh, no avyavi, then there will be no perception at all. Why? Because as I said earlier also, that the avyav, the parts that are there of a whole, they they have to actually be split down to the, what will you say is a part? That is the basic question. What is a part? If you say that a hand is a part, then you can split it into the fingers. Then if you say the fingers are a part, then you can split it into the flesh, the bone, and the marrow, and so on. So if you say the flesh, and so ultimately, if you get my point, if you understand that basically you are saying that the flesh, bone, marrow, and all, you will have to ultimately resolve it into the invisible smallest particles, right? So in modern science, you can say it's the atoms, the electrons, protons, neutrons. Yeah. So like our system says, it's the parmanu. So all, in any case, whichever ultimate particle you reach for, that ultimate particle has to be uh, we call uh, atit indriya, or indriya graya nahi hai. It is not perceptible by the senses. Because why? Because the senses themselves are made up of those ultimate atoms. Yes. So if you cannot perceive a thing by itself, you cannot see the seeing power, you cannot hear the hearing power, you cannot see your indriyas. Why? Because they are you cannot by itself. Just like I gave the example of a torch. In a torch, you can use a battery to illuminate something, right? But you cannot use that torch to illuminate the battery. Hmm. So not such a perfect example, but still. So in this way, sarva agrahanam avyavi siddhi. So he says that in this case, so whenever we are observing an object, we try to resolve it into its parts. We try to resolve it into its parts, and the ultimate parts that we will reach for is always be beyond the senses, reach of the senses. So always the perception that is occurring, even though we see certain parts of that perception, that perception is of a whole, of an avyavi, of a holder of that composition, right? So if there is a holder of that composition, the name of the holder goes to the goes to the composition. You recognize it as in the form of a tree, chair, bench, table, whatever. So in this way, we understand that if only the parts were real, then we would be perceiving the parts, but the parts are never perceived. The parts are too small to be perceived. So always there is a conscious force that brings together those parts. It assembles them into an entity, and thus different entities of with different names, naam, roop, different name and form, they are born and they exist in this world. And whenever we observe any such entity, even though we observe a part of it, we are actually observing only the whole, right? So in this way, we refute that argument of. So another point we add to that argument to make it even stronger. What does it say here? Dharan, akarshana, upapattehe cha. So if we take any whole, so what is, so if we take any whole, say this watch I take, and so can I take away a part of this? Can I hold up? If it were not a whole, then we cannot pull an entire thing part of. We cannot do a dharan. We cannot separate it. If it then that object will not remain the same object. If I break it up, then it will be the components only, right? So in this way, for a human being also and anything else also, eh, because you can take the hand and you pull the hand, then the whole human being will come with it, huh? So that in that way, whenever we uh, interact with only a part, if we interact with only a part, then the whole also comes along with that part. The whole also gets attracted along with that part. So in this way, we are able to interact with the whole. And then akarshan, there is a pulling power, huh? If we pull one part, we can pull the other also. We can hold one part, we can pull one part, huh? And still the whole will also come along with that. So because of that, we can not separate the whole from the part, right? Like we can use this argument, you can use a counter argument. Okay, if I what if I glue two things together, then I'm pulling, then there what is there, even though you are gluing the two things together, you have a different name for each of the two things, right? Or even if I say both things are same, like if I say glue two cups together, then what I'm saying is this is two, so their number will come, sankhya. That is what we say. Sankhya is the argument we say, that you use two cups glued together, not, it is not becoming a new thing. It is not a new thing. But even if you make a new thing, then it will have a new name, then we'll say that this is a whole, right? So by any kind of extra effort, we can join two things and we can create a new thing. And if we have a name for that thing, then also the same argument comes, that there is a new avyavi, a new whole that is born. So that new whole is being perceived. So basically, the simple argument is that we cannot separate the whole from the part. And whenever we do any perception, it may be of a part, but still the whole is perceived, and the whole has a name and a form, right? We can specialize our perception. We can increase more knowledge about the parts. Sometimes there is something inside. So if I see a human being, I can also open him up under a surgeon's table, and I can observe his inner parts. So that does not add to my conclusion that this is a human, right? So some parts may be defective, still that is a human. And then he also gives that example of individual parts, like I was just saying about the Sena and one. So this is the 36th sutra. Sena vanvat iti chet na atindriya atindriyatvad anunam. So he's saying basically, uh, the illustration, this I explained earlier also while going into the argument. So Sena one vat iti, just like just like a Sena, an army, or one a jungle, a forest, uh, इति चेत na atindriyatvat anuna. Eh, they, in their case we can perceive the parts, but in the case of a whole we cannot perceive the parts, the anunam, the parmanus, the individual parmanus we cannot perceive. So that this kind of illustration is not proper, it is not correct. Why? Because when we are seeing that, if we are seeing a single soldier or a single tree from a distance, or an army consisting of numerous soldiers, or forest consisting of numerous trees, so there we can perceive the parts, and you cannot go beyond those parts, right? So if an army is a collection of people, there you don't know need to go into the parts of the body. There you have perceived a soldier, yes, you can see that I have seen the part of this and I can separate it from the whole, right? But in the case of any entity, a conscious entity, or which is not a collection of things, which has a separate name for itself, like a human being, there what happens is, as we put for the argument earlier also, then we can see that each of the individual parts also have to be resolved into the ultimate, which is saying as anuna, as the ultimate particle. So when we reach the level of the ultimate particles, then we have to go into we cannot cognize them, we cannot perceive them. So in that case the parts cannot be perceived, only the whole is perceived after bringing together those parts, right? So I think Manisha is also not well today, so I think we'll wind up for today, because the next topic is entering a different phase. The next one is about the anuman not being a pramanam. Hmm. So anuman is inference. So inference is not a pramanam, or it is not a correct right means of knowledge. Right. So this one will continue in the next class. We'll wind up for today. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम थैंक यू फॉर कमिंग